Rarely has talk about supply chains and industrial capacity been the stuff of dinner table conversations as it has been over the past 2 years. But as COVID has in so many ways, it's prompted reconsideration of how we've been doing things. And in the case of manufacturing, it's reminded everyone why making things in Ontario is never a bad thing. That's all put some key issues on the election agenda. With us for more, in the Greenboro neighborhood of our nation's capital, economic sociologist Aline Coutinho, a postdoctoral fellow at the Smart Prosperity Institute and sessional lecturer at the University of Ottawa. And in the provincial capital, there's Dennis Darby. He's president and CEO of Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. And we're delighted to welcome both of you to our program for a really important topic and something I suspect we need to put more focus on because, Dennis, you're going to start us off by telling us how important manufacturing is to the economic base and future of our province. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Steve. And you're right. It still represents, people talk about manufacturing or post-manufacturing, but not the case in Ontario. It's about $300 billion a year. It's about 11% of our GDP, and it employs about 780,000 workers across Ontario. And aside from a little dip at the start of the pandemic, it's almost completely recovered to those levels. So it's an incredibly important part of the economy. It's about 80% of our exports, most of which go to the U.S.
Now, you said 11% of our gross domestic product here in the province. Is that number rising or declining?
It has been more or less flat for the last few years, more because other sectors have grown faster. But from a dollar point of view, in 2019, we hit an all-time record amount of manufacturing sales. So it's kind of held its own.
Okay. Aline, for those people who are perhaps new to our province and who don't know, let's go through a bit of a checklist right here. What are the key manufacturing industries in the province of Ontario that we rely on so much?
Yeah, the manufacturing in Ontario has changed tremendously in the past 30 years. Currently, we continue being a powerhouse in automotive manufacturing, auto parts. We're pretty good as well in biotech, pharmaceuticals, chemicals. These are durable goods manufacturing are what we are really good at.
And why do you think these companies, I guess I'm asking, what's the Ontario advantage? Why do they want to be here?
Well, Ontario has a tradition in, automotive sector. We are really good places to attract clean tech workforce. We have a good infrastructure for that. We are very close to our neighbors in the South, in the United States, very integrated markets. It's very easy to, move goods across borders. So we are very good, strategically well positioned to be at the forefront of manufacturing in North America.
Now, having said that, Dennis, anybody who has lived here for a while will well remember that over the past couple of recessions, the manufacturing sector in particular has been hit really hard, and we did shed a lot of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs, over a period of time. What would you say are the most pressing challenges, therefore, facing manufacturing in the province today?
Well, I think the biggest challenge today in the current is the shortage of labor. In fact, as Aline said, we have a great workforce, but we haven't been able to get as many people into Ontario to support, this sector, which, includes, I want to just make one thing. Food processing alone is $46 billion. So it's another big part of the manufacturing we do in Ontario. And so we need people. That's been the number one issue. Whether it's training and retraining, but really getting more people in Ontario, because there are somewhere around 30 to 35,000 unfilled jobs. So despite the discussion about recessions, we really could hire anyone who's available right now in Ontario.
So in your judgment, is that a cry out for more immigration or for more people graduating from our post-secondary institutions to fill those roles?
Both. Of course, we need more. We had about a year and a half where we really didn't have that influx of net immigration of skilled workers and that we needed. And you're right, we really have to get more people, women, girls, newcomers to go into the manufacturing sector. I mean, again, it's really important for us to be able to have that workforce of the future because the jobs have really changed. They're not, they're not the backbreaking jobs of maybe our youth, Steve, that we were think about, very high tech, and people have to have those skills if we're going to compete.
And I was just talking the other day on this program about the mining sector and the fact that many people will have an impression of somebody on their hands and knees with a pickaxe hammering against a wall, and those aren't the skills you need to be a miner anymore. You got to know how to run computers, you got to know big tech, et cetera, et cetera. So, Eleni, let me get you to respond to the same question. The most pressing challenges, in your judgment, facing the manufacturing sector today are what?
That is it. I agree. I totally agree. It's a skilled labor force. Manufacturing sector has changed tremendously. We have upgraded our industries. It has been automated. We really need those high-skilled tradespeoples working on in manufacturing. The thing is, our population is aging as well, so we are losing that pool of skilled workers as well. So yes, immigration is a way to circumvent, but also investing in the population that is already here as well, ensuring that we have equity-seeking groups, expanding the opportunities for them to fully participate and enter the manufacturing sector as well. Another issue, aside the workforce and skill shortages that we are facing, is access to capital. A lot of manufacturing firms, they are small firms, they are medium, small firms. They have encountered difficulties, especially in the clean tech sector, encountered difficulties in accessing that capital for scale-up, startups, etc. So that's another issue, a challenge that must be addressed.
Gotcha. Let me invite the two of you just to get comfortable for a moment, because I want to take a moment here just to go through the four major parties' platforms and what they have on offer as it relates to manufacturing. So we'll put some graphics up describing that. For those of you listening on podcast right now, I'll read out some of these bullet points so you can get a sense of what's on offer. This is in order of precedence in the last House. And here are some of the pledges related to manufacturing from the PCs, who have pledged $685 million to Ford, GM, and Honda to support electric vehicles and EV hybrid model manufacturing. Another $107 million over 3 years towards critical technologies. And they've committed $1 billion for developing infrastructure, such as an all-season road to the Ring of Fire in northwestern Ontario. Let's move on to the NDP. The New Democrats are promising that 100% of vehicle sales in the province will need to be zero emission by the year 2035. As part of their labor force strategy, the NDP say they will work with manufacturers to fill vacancies and provide appropriate training. You were just talking, Dennis, about that. They plan to introduce a new cap-and-trade program as well. On to the Liberals, who plan to reinvest from a strengthened carbon pricing plan to advance clean tech and create jobs. They intend to create a North American Battery Alliance. Their platform includes $9 billion in investment over 4 years into a clean economy plan, which they say would create 25,000 new green jobs. And speaking of Greens, here's what the Greens have on offer. They're pledging to implement a comprehensive EV manufacturing and transportation strategy. Over 4 years, they're talking about a $5 billion investment to EV mobility and green tech innovation, and another $4 billion into their so-called climate bank. Okay, that's a lot to digest, so let's take some time here and go through this. Dennis, you've seen it. We're going to go through sort of what you like and what you don't like. So start off with what you like.
So I think this is one of those times when most of the parties are committed to about the same thing, which is really how to help transform this industry. So those capital investments are so critical, because they support the whole supply chain. So those commitments to capital investment, and really, when you use the word green tech or clean tech, all manufacturing need to move to that clean tech. I need to adopt the technologies to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, to be more fuel efficient in how they manufacture products. So I think the Conservative government has made some choices, and I think they really are quite broad scale, and it really builds on that transportation and machine building history of this province. No real quibbles with any of the parties. I think training is really important. How you get there, how you get that training, whether it's tax credits at the employer level, especially for SMEs, or it's more broad adjustments to colleges. I think we're all going in the same direction.
Okay, Eleni, what jumped out at you as being something you think is really useful among the party platforms?
I agree. I agree that there is a certain similarity across all these platforms, and they're all locating discussions about manufacturing within this broader transition to achieve our net zero goals, right? So decarbonizing the economy, decarbonizing manufacturing, which is great. What I really like is these conversations. They do talk and they address those shortages, those challenges that we have just identified not long ago in terms of skills, increasing the pool of workers and investments, access to investment. One thing that I feel that is lacking is a broader conversation about, as my colleague here has just identified, how are we going to do that? How are we going to train those? How are we going to create those opportunities for people, for workers to firms to not only attract workers but retain those workers, especially workers from equity deserving groups? How are we going to achieve that? So I feel that there needs to be a broader conversation about manufacturing, not as an isolated sector in our economy, but in communication with other sectors as well, higher education, other partners, other stakeholders, other sectors of the economy. How can we together collaborate and ensuring that manufacturing remains a powerhouse in Ontario's economy?
Dennis, do you have a view in terms of responding to the concern Eleni just raised there?
Yeah, I think what we're speaking about here is that where high tech goes to produce GDP is in manufacturing. So you're right. We have to first of all incentivize employers, when they make new hires, to help them train and develop those employees. There's data from Europe and countries like Germany and Italy and France where they do that does drive some loyalty. So number one, if you train them and provide that career advancement and the knowledge build, you'll keep them. Number two, we need to make sure, and this is good, we're having a provincial discussion today, Steve, because normally at the federal level, the federal government can just sort of throw money to the provinces and how they spend it, is up to them, and it's hard to coordinate. Here's where Ontario can actually be in the lead and say, okay, we're going to help bring more STEM graduates in. We're going to help get more of them, the people who are in the current, maybe who got displaced during COVID, how do we get them the skills they need? So I think there's a strong need to have a real concrete plan because, aside from labor and supply chain and investment, other than that, everything's fine. But in this particular case, labor is the one that we probably can act on, I think, the most quickly.
And follow up, if you would, on that, Dennis. Do you see one party over another having a better as opposed to worse plan to help deal with those labor shortages?
No, I think they've all articulated the right thing. I think where the current government has started and made some commitments on training, I think it's a great start. And but at the end of the day, in Ontario, manufacturing and the whole area of the industrial economy is so important. I don't think any party would not make those investments. You just have to.
Okay, I want to raise with both of you now an issue that was not in any of those charts we just showed, and that is electricity, namely a reliable and affordable source of electricity for manufacturers in this province. And we heard some rumors not a week ago about the fact that one of these multi-billion-dollar announcements made by both the federal and provincial governments for an EV battery plant for Stellantis in southwestern Ontario was potentially in jeopardy because the company wasn't convinced that we had a reliable source of electricity here in the province going forward a decade, which, of course, they need to see to make this kind of commitment. Eleni, start us off on this. How concerned should manufacturing be that we don't have this affordable and reliable source of electricity in the province anymore?
Very, very. It's a cost. Right, electricity is a cost. So part of this strategy to advance and ensuring that manufacturing is it's healthy is to ensure that the costs of electricity are low. Also, facilitate, it would be great if all parties could include discussions about how can manufacturers access clean energy as well, clean electricity as well, as we transition to a net zero carbon economy.
Dennis, can I get you on that?
Yes, I agree. One of the things when you look at the cost of doing business in Ontario, when you talk to manufacturers, versus, for example, Quebec, where hydro is, electricity is much cheaper, and even Manitoba in the other direction, I think there's a real urgent need, and I thought the comments made by Stellantis, are something that we ought to think about. How do we get us to a position where we maybe are using more nuclear power or using more other clean energies, because we really do have to make sure that on that one cost input, which is after labor, tends to be the second biggest. After the cost of labor, it's usually the cost of energy, which is the biggest cost that manufacturers face. So let's make sure we have a long-term plan that is inclusive. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion around small modular reactors, for example, as one component. We need to look at everything at this point.
Well, let me follow up on that again, because the Pickering nuclear reactors, which are coming up on, I guess, about 60 years old soon, are set to be mothballed, I believe, in a couple of years' time. And one of the first things that the Ford government did when it came into power was cancel a whole bunch of contracts with renewable electricity generators. And I wonder, okay, Eleni, tell us, in hindsight, how smart a decision was that?
That is complicated. That will have costs, and that creates uncertainty for investors, uncertainty for consumers as well. We don't know. We know it's necessary to achieve our goals, our net zero goals, to heavily invest in in renewable energy, biofuels, hydrogen, and etc. Rolling back sends the wrong signals that Ontario is serious about these issues, about affordable and resilient energy system.
Dennis, on a list of bad decisions, where would you put the one to cancel all those renewable electricity generating contracts?
Well, it was one of the bad parts of that whole program was the cost was very high, and that was off-putting. So the problem was we didn't have a substitute. So if you want to change that, what is the alternative? And I think that's something that governments are going to have to wrestle with. We have to have an alternative source. The one thing we haven't talked about, as this transition to EV vehicles goes on, we all know that all of a sudden the demand for electricity is going, not at the industrial level, at the consumer level, is going to increase. So we have to be building that capacity, and we need to be building it now. And we really hope that any government that comes in realizes that our needs really need to match our wants in the next 20 to 30 years. And boy, you can't start too soon.
Eleni, have you come to a conclusion as to which party best understands this net zero transition that involves, of course, electric vehicles and therefore possibly a lot more electricity generation capacity that we're going to need to deal with that?
I think these parties, all of these platforms that they put forward, they're very similar. They are all heavily investing on electric vehicles, developing electric vehicles charging infrastructure. But it's important to realize that this is not enough. This will not be enough. So they're all heading towards the same goals, towards the same ideas. But they are all very much limited still. We have to be going beyond just hoping that manufacturing of electric vehicles is going to place us in a very competitive manufacturing position to be competitive with other jurisdictions as well.
And Dennis, I'm not asking you to carry the can for the PC party here, but the reality is the first year they were in power, they ripped up all the charging stations that the previous government had attempted to build, and now they're shoveling money out the door faster than you can imagine in order to attract EV capacity here. Does that demonstrate to you a level of wisdom needed to get this job done?
Well, I guess we never get angry at someone who converts, even if it's late. So at the end of the day, they've had that conversion on the road to Damascus to really understand that you cannot produce the kind of economic output that we need unless we make these investments, unless we're providing the capital, not just the demand side, because a lot of governments and a lot of parties talk about consumer incentives, and those are great. But what we need to make sure is that there are industrial incentives for people to locate that equipment here to locate lower energy or to put lower energy technologies in place. So let's make sure that we're looking at both sides. And where it ends up, I don't know, but we certainly can't compete with our trading partners if we haven't got a low carbon, cost-effective energy system to support production.
Eleni, your friend Dennis there just described it as a conversion on the road to Damascus. Are you sure this conversion is going to stick?
I agree with him. I agree that we need to really facilitate and pave the road. We need to have a vision. We need to have a vision of the role of manufacturing in this greening economy, in this low carbon transition. And this vision, it has to be more holistic, has to be more broadly. We have to, it has to inform the kind of policy decisions, the policy framework that we're going to be putting in place to ensure that manufacturing will thrive in this, not only thrive, but lead this transition to a greener economy.
Yeah, Dennis, one more on this, and that is the current government of Ontario is obviously making a multi-billion-dollar bet that EVs are the future. Are you sure it's the right bet?
Well, first of all, I think you can't go in Ontario because of our history and because of the size of the transportation sector and all the companies, the thousands of companies that support it. You can't not but invest in that because there's so much dependent on our ability to continue to be part of the next transportation revolution. 60, 70 years ago, we had the Auto Pack. It made sense. It brought production of cars to Ontario and vehicles to Ontario. And beside it, it brought all the suppliers, the thousands of suppliers of everything from chemicals to parts to ingredients that go into those cars. So if you're going to stay in that game, and Ontario, I think, has made it pretty clear they want to stay in that game, then we need to be making those investments to attract those large capital. Last time it was internal combustion, now it's electric. So I think I don't think they really have a choice, to be frank.
Gotcha. In our last few minutes here, I know you two both have long wish lists of what, in your dreams you'd love to see governments do in order to backstop manufacturing and its growth in the economy. So, Eleni, let's get started on that. What's on your wish list that you haven't seen fulfilled yet?
I wish the conversation about promoting manufacturing would be more place-based in Ontario. Manufacturing, it's a broad term. It's an umbrella term. We're talking about auto vehicles, biotech, food processing, clean tech, etc. Each of these subsectors require a specific number of skills. We can just go with one-size-fits-all strategy and assume that we're going to meet all of these different needs that are by sector, that are by regions as well. So we need to have a much more nuanced conversation around how to better promote these different sectors to advance them and create competitive advantages here in Ontario.
Dennis, how about you?
Well, one of the things we said early on was we talked about this thing called the 2% challenge, which means you really have an industrial strategy that attracts at least 2% of the average OECD investment in technology across the broad sector. We said that's about $18 billion a year we'd have to add to the investment in Ontario. And Eleni's right. And then we need to cascade from that. What are we going to do for each of the sectors? So we really need an industrial strategy at the end of the day. The Conservatives have talked about one, and we look forward to what that looks like, because at this stage, it's a bit piecemeal, and we need to make sure that we have, we want to know where we want to go.
Dennis, I've been hearing people from your organization for 40 years say we need an industrial strategy, and it doesn't seem to actually happen. Why is that?
Well, that's a good question, Steve. I think, and look at me, I'm aged 40 years, boy. Let me tell you, at the end, what really is often difficult is governments tend to make a lot of short-term decisions and all the small incremental decisions. The Canadian government's often talked about peanut buttering everything, put a bit everywhere. I think it's time at this stage of our evolution, post-pandemic, and the realization that we need this industrial strategy or an industrial sector, that we actually focus. And I think Ontario is in, like Quebec. Quebec is probably the only other place where it's a large enough sector where you can really focus. So let's hope this time it sticks.
Gotcha. I want to thank both of you for coming on to TVO tonight and sharing your views with us. Aline Coutinho from the Smart Prosperity Institute, Dennis Darby from the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. Great to have you both with us, and take care the rest of the way.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.